Good evening, Smoky Valley and parents, students. This is kind of for everybody. We initially set out, well, first of all, my name is Mr. Lee. I'm your new principal.
I am Mr. Swisher. I am the assistant principal and athletic director here.
And we wanted to put a video together to just highlight some of the changes and maybe what to expect as your students enter school for the first time this year. So initially this was designed for freshmen and new students, but we realized quickly that kind of everybody's a freshman this year. So these protocols that we're going to go over are for everybody. So I'm going to start. Mr. Swish and I will bounce back and forth, and then we'll go from there. So the first thing I want to reiterate is probably the most important is if you're not feeling well this year, we do need you to stay home. And there's a list of symptoms that we're going to publish with kids, and you've probably seen, but things like fevers, vomiting, muscle aches, loss of smell, loss of taste, all those things, cough, shortness of breath. Basically, if you have symptoms that are out of the norm for you, especially the high fever, we need you to go ahead and stay home at that day. Mr. Swisher is going to talk you through entering the building and what that's going to look like, how it'll be different this year, and we'll just ping pong back and forth.
So when you come in the building, one thing we are asking is that students do not arrive early to school. In the past, they've come to the commons or to the gym and have hung out there until the bell rings. And in an effort to try to social distance and control our crowds and our numbers, we're not going to allow that this year. So we are asking that students go directly to their first hour classrooms, and that's where they report to when they first arrive to school. So those of you guys that are riding the bus, your arrival time will be dependent on the bus and when they drop you off here, and they have all that worked out. But if you're not riding the bus, we're asking that you don't arrive any earlier than 10 to 15 minutes before the start of school. Understand those front doors are not going to be open before 7:50 p.m. So if you come early, AM. If you come early, they won't be open. But again, just use your judgment. Come, but don't come too early. We're trying to really crack down on those social gatherings. You go directly to your first hour when you arrive here, and if you are a breakfast kiddo, if you're going to eat breakfast with us, you'll pick up your breakfast and you'll actually take that to your first hour class and eat it in the classroom there too. So when you come in the building, everybody is going to be expected to be masked up. You got to have a mask on. That's just our new norm this year. So we ask when you come through that building, you're wearing that mask, and then we will also be taking temperature checks as you come through that door. As everybody comes into the building, and this is for both students and staff, one of the mandates is that we will be taking their temperature. So for the first couple days of school, we'll be greeting you at the door, and we'll have the handheld thermometers and taking your temperature that way. Hopefully by next week, our temperature scanners are coming in, and then it'll be much more of a smooth line process for us to get through the door.
Okay. I'm going to take you to hallways and kind of what's expected in our hallways. So we do want to maintain consistent traffic flow, and we want to limit crowd size and loitering in the hallways, if you will. So we'll have some directional arrows on the floor, and if you think of traffic, that cars stay on the right side of the lane, we're going to expect our students to do the same thing. So when they're going to and from class, they need to be constantly moving, not hanging out at their locker, and staying on the right side of traffic. So we just want to minimize the congregation in the hallways and make sure that we're ensuring smooth traffic flow, and the way we'll do that is to stay on the right side. I will go ahead and touch base on lockers, and then I'll let Mr. Swisher take the next topic. Lockers will be available for students in the morning time. We start on Thursday, at lunch, and then also after school. So we are going to try to reduce the usage of lockers as much as we can, because that could potentially become a high-touch surface. We recognize the need for students to put a winter coat or lunch in the locker, and we obviously recognize the need for students to pick that up at the end of the school day. We will allow students to go to locker if they forget something with teacher permission, but we really want our students, to the best of their ability, to be prepared to minimize their usage of lockers and to not use those during passing periods.
So as it relates to coming into the classroom, students are expected to keep their masks on at all times in the classroom. That's part of the executive order and the mandate, and so we're going to follow that one, and we're asking everybody to continue to wear their masks while they're in the building and in the classrooms. Students will sanitize hands when they enter and when they exit the classroom. We are trying to sanitize and keep those hands clean as much as possible. And so we will ask when the kids are coming into the classroom that they go ahead and put on some hand sanitizer, and then again when they leave. Students will also be asked to participate in the cleaning of the classroom as we exchange classes. So we're going to reserve the last couple minutes of the day, of the class period, to go ahead and clean the classroom and get a few things cleaned up around there.
Okay, so that we're trying to kind of go through the flow of the day. So we've entered the building, we've done a transitional period in the hallway, we've gotten to our classrooms. That's going to stay pretty consistent up until the lunch period, and then lunch we've got to do a few additional procedures that might be a little bit different. So normally students would enter into a little serving area. Those students that are returning know the serving area that I'm talking about. This year that will not happen, so students will have a tray that is packaged for them. And they'll have a little bit of choice in what goes on that tray, but for the most part, things are going to be preloaded and prepackaged. And students will stay in the sort of the commons area to pick that meal up. We are going to have hand sanitization stations in the cafeteria, so before they get their tray, they need to sanitize. And we'll socially distance when we're in line there. As far as seating goes, we do want students to sit socially distanced. So in our big tables, we've reduced that capacity from 8 to 4. On our smaller tables, we have reduced capacity from 4 to 2. So we are reducing the amount of seating at our tables. We do have some benches around the exterior. We brought in some white folding tables that students can eat at. And if it's Crispito Day, we anticipate having lots of students interested in eating will overflow into our gym area. Now that means students may have to eat on their laps. But we want to make sure that we're providing social distance, especially those times. It's pretty difficult to eat while masked, so we want to make sure that we have plenty of space between kiddos. And then before they go back to back to classroom, they will sanitize their hands again. Open lunch will stay, so if you're an 11th grader or 12th grader and you're in good standing, you do have the opportunity to go to open lunch. One of the things that we're going to ask to reduce the amount of people in the cafeteria or the commons is that if you go out for lunch, you stay out the 30 minutes. So you can come back to the building and sit outside if it's nice weather. You can, hang out in your car. We just need to make sure that we limit how many people are in that serving area so that we can maintain that social distance. And I think that's all I have for lunch. So, Mr. Swisher?
So after lunch, we'll go through the rest of our class schedule, which will be much like the morning, and then we're going to talk a little bit about exiting the building. So students are expected to leave the school building at their designated time and head home or load the bus. So when that bell rings at 3:35 p.m., unless you are involved in an after-school activity or you have specific permission to remain at school and work with a teacher, we are asking for everybody to exit the building as quickly as possible, and also the parking lots. We don't want people hanging around and loitering in the parking lots. We're trying to clear out, again, what we're trying to do is minimize the risk, and the best way we can do that is to try to avoid exposure to big groups and other groups of kids. So we're asking that when the day is done that you go ahead and leave and head out the building. If you are in a sport or activity, obviously you'll report to your locker room. But again, remember, the masks have to be worn after school and as you're heading into the locker rooms to change for practice. One other quick thing, if you are a bus student and you're riding the bus home, you are going to have to wear your mask on the bus and the entire time that you're on the bus. And then we're also saying that students are not allowed to eat or drink on the bus because of the increased need for masking. So we don't want those masks coming down. The buses are going to be crowded. We're going to have a lot of kids on those buses, and we don't want the mask to come down for you to eat or drink. So at this time, we're asking that students not eat or drink on the bus.
So that pretty well gets us through a school day, and we know that this is, maybe a 10-minute video that you're going to have questions on, and your teachers have been through this process as well and helped establish these protocols. So the first day of school, if you have questions, we'll certainly try to answer those. There may be things from your perspective that you have thought of and need questions on, and we'll do our best to address those. This is, again, as mentioned earlier, kind of freshman year for everybody. There's not anybody that's been through this before, so we're all doing the best that we can. I do want to say that this is obviously my first year in the building, and I can tell you that I've never felt as much excitement for having kids back in the building as I have this year. I think our teachers have missed you guys since March. It's been about 170 days since we've seen kiddos, so we're ready to have you guys back. Hopefully you are ready to be back and get some sense of normalcy. So it's not going to be totally normal. Obviously the masks are pretty different, but I will tell you from my personal experience, you get used to them pretty quick and they become the new normal. So we'll get through this together. We appreciate you guys watching this video. Thank you, and we see you in a couple of days, and we're excited to have you back. So that's all for now. Stay tuned.